What is up, everybody? Back out here in the shop today. Just apologize for, it's been a while since I posted any videos. Just trying to get this razor done. Had a lot to do, and I just can't leave it alone. Got a pretty big project today. I kind of thought on this for a while, whether I was going to do it or not, and whether I could even get my hands on one. But we are going to do the RS1 diff conversion in Project Extended Cab. I want to say a big thanks to a couple of my buddies. I won't say no names, but they kind of talked me into doing this, and I did it before I really beat on this stock diff. The turbo diffs, they are great. They're a lot stronger than the original XP diff, but they're still the basic same design. I mean, they still have the small roll pin, the sprag cage that is a weak point. I haven't personally run a RS1 diff yet, or a turbo S diff. They're the same thing, but from everything I've seen or read or talked to people, my couple buddies that run them say they're amazing. Like I said, I've run these diffs for a while, had issues, ratcheting. You can weld the cups and all that stuff, get a lot stronger parts from them, but I was going to do it right the first time. There's a lot of opinions out there whether this is the right way to go, but I'm really happy that I've got my hands on one for one. For that, I want to thank Chase Motorsports. It's a couple buddies of mine, Cody and Dylan, that run a local shop here in Paducah, Kentucky. I'll leave a link in the description to their website. If you're looking for a used, pretty much new, they have a lot of new used units, razors, Rangers, all kinds of stuff. Hit them up on their website, give them a call, and they can help you out with units, parts, all kinds of stuff. They got me this diff. They've been back ordered for months. The rumor was they wouldn't be available till April. Today is February the 16th. So I was lucky enough to get my hands on one. I want to say big thanks to Joe Kaufman at Kaufman Custom Machine. He hooked me up with this bracket that basically goes in a factory turbo frame to make the RS1 diff work. This is a top-notch piece, all CNC machined aluminum, billet aluminum with, makes this thing go in nice. There is some modification to the frame, which we all know. I'm going to try to kind of do, not really a step-by-step, because there's a lot of grinding and cutting and whatnot, but Joe Kaufman Custom Machine, they have the great color instructions on their website. I'll leave a link in the description to their website for the kit to make this diff work in a XP 1000 or an XP Turbo. Comes with everything you need, all the hardware, bolts, comes with the adapter plug. That's on the RS1 diff / Turbo S diff. The plug is a 2-pin plug, and then on the turbos it's a 4-pin, which we only use 2 wires. I don't know why they put that on there, but they did. So it's an adapter plug, make that work. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. You just got to have some minor fabrication skills to be able to modify the frame and make this diff fit. It is a tight squeeze. This plate does allow you to mount a winch to the top side of it. I don't personally have my winch yet, so I'm not going to mount it. I may regret that, but I'm going to try to put it in a little later, or I may even put it on the bumper. This is going in a 2019 Razor XP Turbo, so there is a little bit of difference in the front of the frame than, say, your 18, 17, 16, even your 15 XPs. I noticed looking at it, I'll show you here in a minute, that where the pinion housing goes underneath the steering rack, there's a bigger opening now, so you don't have to do as much trimming and cleaning. We still have to do a little bit, but not as much. A few tools that gonna make this easier, I feel like. Got just a 90-degree 3-inch cutoff pneumatic. Got an air sander. You're gonna need 3 or 4 different size sockets, 11/16, 1/2 inch, and 3/4 wrenches, 3/8 Allen for your big bolts. I'm sure I'm missing something. I'm sure I'll have to have some miscellaneous tools. Hopefully I don't have to use this too much, but I foresee that going to happen probably. Other than that, it's basically just, I've already got my razor basically tore all the way down. Basically, you have to disassemble pretty much the whole front of the razor. Like I said, in his instructions, it tells you everything you need to do. Basically, pull the front fascia off, drain all the coolant, which basically all I did was just disconnect the coolant lines, drain them into a clean bucket so I'm going to filter the coolant and reuse it. Basically took the upper A-arms off, pull the stock diff out. For those of you who don't know, it's pretty straightforward. Drive the roll pin out of the drive shaft, yoke, and 4 bolts on the bottom, 15mm. Diff will lift right out. Got to make sure you unplug the full drive cable. Remove a few brackets, the regulator, radiator mount supports, and basically you have a clean, clear workspace. There is 5 or 6 places you have to do some modifications, and I will show you that right now. So basically, as you can see, I got my razor on my lift raised up, and she's pretty much tore apart. The radiators are out. They're laying over here. A-arms, there's the regulator, a couple of brackets, pardon the mess, but it's a lot of stuff, axles, hubs. So pretty much you've got an open area to work. So if you can see right here, let me get it where I can see, this arch is a lot bigger on the 19 models. I'm not sure about the 18s, but you have to, in the instructions, you have to, get down here where you can see a little better. You have to make this arch bigger, because on the older models, it's not cut out like this. I'm still gonna, see I've got it marked with a Sharpie, still gonna cut this corner of the steering rack bracket off, and you still have to cut this remaining threads flush with the nut. It gives you that much more clearance. You also have to trim this little edge right here on the frame, kind of smooth it out. Up here on your radiator support bracket, you have to cut a notch in that, remove that section, and you have to remove the, like I said, all this is in instructions. This fair lead opening here for a winch, you have to remove the bottom side of it to allow clearance. And probably the hardest and most tedious part of this, I'm going to say, is you have to cut out the front mount points of where the stock diff sits. Basically, you're going to have a hole all the way through your frame right here. Sorry, camera skills are horrible. Basically, you're going to have a hole cut here, and it's going to be, you'll be seeing daylight through there. All right, guys, I'm back. Pretty much got everything done, cut out. Got the bracket here cut out. Got this trimmed off here. This bolt trimmed off. I've kind of gotten to a point down here on this where it's hard to get to with a Dremel or a angle grinder. So I am going to break out the big dogs. Plasma cutter. I really wasn't wanting to use a plasma cutter, but it's kind of my only option. I have disconnected the ECU and the battery just in case, because a lot of current going through this thing, but that should do the trick. So we are going to finish off this front piece here with the old Hypertherm 65. There it is. Should have done that first. Old plasma torch to the rescue. That's pretty thick metal there, about 3/16 thick. But do a little cleanup now and do a test fit. All right, guys. I got the diff in a razor. It was kind of wasn't too bad. There's kind of a way you got to cock it and get it in. It takes just a little bit of time, and once you get it right position, it just kind of falls right in if you've got everything modified right. Like I said just a while ago, make sure you give yourself plenty of clearance on the inboard cross member for the fair lead and the two angle cuts you make on the radiator support bracket, and it'll go right in. Now what we're going to do is, we've got this bracket from Kaufman machine, and we have to take it apart, put the two side arms on the diff, top plate, and there is a proper orientation. If you look, and it says clearly in his instructions, there's a thicker bar and a thinner bar. Make sure that they go on the proper sides, or you're going to have issues. Basically, this thing bolts to the diff, to the frame in a couple spots right here, to like where you would put a winch plate with the factory set up. But good thing about this one is you've got a winch plate built into your top plate here. Nice, it's a nice piece, man. It's hard to beat. But anyway, I'm going to take this thing apart, take these bolts out, put these side arms on, and I had to loosen up the carrier bearing and slide the drive shaft back to give me some clearance. Once we get everything bolted up, we'll slide the drive shaft onto the pinion in the input shaft. And like I said, I think the hard part's over. One huge note is I checked my diff and it already had fluid in it. Probably going to run it 50 miles and check it or change it. But big sticker right here on the side, 250 milliliters is the amount of fluid that goes in here. Demand drive, Polaris fluid. It's what they recommend. It's what I run. It's good stuff. But just double check and make sure you got fluid. It is easier to fill these on the bench. I was going to fill it up, opened it up, and it already had fluid in it. So that's a plus. Some of them might, some of them might not. So anyway, we're going to continue on. Disassemble this plate, put the side arms on, and I think we're heading in the right direction. This plate has awesome hardware. I mean, he's gone above and beyond. Laser cut, makes my plasma table look like crap. Nice smooth edges, but not that my plasma table doesn't cut good, but this thing cuts awesome. All right, so lay that out. This bar goes on this side, so we're going to put that over here. This one goes in here, just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get one of these bolts we got here. And through the back here and just get it started. We want to keep everything nice and loose starting off. We don't want to tighten anything up because we will have to adjust this thing, of course. Get it started. That's a 1/2 inch. That back bolt there is a 1/2 inch bolt or 1/2 inch head. Anyway, use a socket to get it started. Snug it up decent. One thing I did forget, I'm going to pull this back out here in just a minute, and I'm going to put Loctite on this bolt. I'm going to Loctite everything except for the big bolts that go all the way through. They have a nylock nut on them, so there won't be any need in Loctiting them unless you just want to. But all the small hardware that's threaded on this piece, I'll put a little dab of Loctite on them, just a little bit more insurance. I'm going to slide around to the other side, put the other bar on, and continue. The hardware we're using for these back ones is these little, you can see that, it's these little shouldered bolts, nice quality, like an automotive bolt with a shoulder on it. This one coolant line here has been the hindrance, trying to keep it out of the way, and I probably could have zip tied it up, but me being me, I just fought it the whole time. Anyway, take this bracket, make sure it's good and clean, and drop it will go. It's got a few nice nicks on it. One thing to be aware of too is just be careful with your with the cable coming out of the diff. You don't want to damage it. It'd be a bad day. You spend $1,200 on a diff and then you rip the cable out of it. So just be extra careful. Take a little extra precaution not to tear your new diff up. Bolt started. Just gonna take the socket and just should have got. I'm gonna get some Loctite before I forget to do that. I got some right here. Should look good. Take this bolt back out here. Add a Loctite. A lot of vibration in these machines. You don't take any. Can't be safe enough with a Loctite. You don't want this stuff coming loose on you and causing issues in the future. This is a one-time deal, and hopefully you ain't got to worry about this thing. One thing too, if you do have a bad steering rack or a steering rack that's fixing to go out or got issues, I highly recommend going ahead and changing that thing while you're in here and got this diff out, because you're not going to be able to get to all the bolts on the steering rack without pulling this diff back out. Just FYI, the only way this diff can come out too is through the top. So if you got to pull this diff out, just forewarning you, you got to pull the radiators, intercooler, and all that stuff off again. So just to save you some future work, if your steering rack's about to go out, go ahead and change it while you're in here. Save you some headache in the near future. My unit's pretty much, it's brand new, so I'm going to run it. I got to pull it out again. I plan on surfacing this diff, here pretty soon. Hopefully I ain't got to pull it out, but if I do, we'll go from there. But got that bolt tied. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this one out over here. Put some Loctite on it. All right, got that in there, nice and snug.
like I said, this is a great looking piece. Now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to take this adapter here, this plug. It's included with your plate. Go ahead and plug the harness in and get the diff plugged in. That way we don't forget. And it's easier to do it right now whenever you got plenty of room. So go ahead and plug it in. Run the wire back here to the existing plug. Make sure we're clear of all the steering U-joints. Plug it right in. All right. So now, all right, so now we'll go ahead, we got our vent to our diff here. We'll go ahead and get it routed where it needs to go. Again, I'm gonna clean this up whenever I get everything back on. Bring it down and pull the cap off. Hook our vent up. So again, this plate, if you notice, it's in the instructions as well. You've got a notch. You've got a notch cut right here and a notch on this side. This side here has got the notch is deeper into this plate. So again, make sure you keep the orientation correct on this plate, putting it back on. Again, it's in his instructions. Just wanted to hit all the high notes, make sure that you don't put it in wrong. So put this plate in now. That'll get all your everything lined up like it needs to be. So I had to loosen up these bolts here, the ones that we tightened. They're snugged up on the main arms. It wasn't allowing this plate to sit flat. Again, that's why you leave everything loose. We got everything loose now. I haven't got the bolts on the top of the plate yet because I want to get it lined up. You got to put these two bolts and these bushings in the top side of the plate on the front. Again, I'll show you whenever here in just a second. But there's a little plate on the frame that's got like 6 holes, and in the instructions it tells you what holes to put these bushings and these bolts in. And there's threaded holes on the plate that comes with the diff kit from Kaufman. It's pretty self-explanatory, but again, we're going to Loctite these, put these in nice and loose, get everything started and lined up. Like I said, I run into an issue, and the only reason why I had an issue is because I had my bolts too tight. Wasn't allowing the top plate to sit flat on these arms, and it's putting in too much of a bind. So loosen it up, everything kind of fell right into place. So we're going to put these in, get everything lined up, and then we will put the 6 bolts back in the top plate and line the arms up and go from there. So like I said, in the top of this there's holes, and you can see where they go, and I'll show you here just a second here. There's one started, and then there's the second one. You can kind of move the plate around, and say we're going to leave them snug. Now I'm going to start a bolt in these top 6 bolts here. And there's one. Like I said, be careful not to cross thread this stuff. It's aluminum. It will cross thread, so just make sure you start everything by hand. Don't use impacts or or whatnot, but it's pretty well common sense. But start everything by hand, then come back and tighten it up after everything's started. So got one started. May have to loosen that up again. But there, get this one started. Yeah, I'm gonna loosen these two bolts up some more. Make my life a little easier. I wanna get a shallow 1/2 inch. That deep well a little too deep. The Loctite's already starting to kind of set up on these. But what I'm doing is I'm loosening these two bolts on the back side here to allow me more movement in these pieces. And so get all these bolts started. Alright, we got them loose now. Should be. Oh yeah. Sucker fell right into place. Go ahead and get one started on this side. Kind of learning as I go. This is the first one of these I've done, so one thing I will say is keep everything pretty loose. It's making stuff a lot easier. So learn from my mistakes. But we got our 6 bolts in. That's got our plate and our arms and everything lined up. Now we can go and we can get the diff and slide our. We got two 9-inch bolts with a 3/8 Allen and nylock nuts. That's what's going to slide through the diff and through the plate. So at this point we're going to try to get those in there and line them up. Come with a machined washer. Pretty nice quality washer. Looks like that's something that Joe made at his machine shop. So the front hole's already pretty well lined up. Yep, perfect. Fell right through there. And you can see on this plate on the driver's side, this machine hole is smaller. That's for the head of this bolt. These bolts need to go in from the driver's side to the passenger side. Pretty well lined up. We'll take the rubber mallet and just tap them through. Fell right through there. All right, go ahead and easily put our nuts on here. As you can see, it's kind of a beveled washer, so the bevel side towards the nut. Just kind of a clean look instead of putting a cheap washer on there. He's making a nice quality piece. So. Like I said, people like this that go above and beyond on parts, it makes it worth every penny. All right. So the nuts on these are 3/4, and like I said, the Allens are 3/8. I'm gonna go ahead and just, like I said, make sure everything's started. Just lightly snug them up. I'm just barely getting it started in the nylock. Same thing on the back. Okay. Back to what I was saying. These little plates here. Now again, another high quality machine piece from Kaufman Machine. They are, what they do is they basically go right there. You bolt one to the plate, and then the A-arm bolt goes through and gives added support. Man, that thing is spot on. That is awesome. This is a this piece, man. I can't say enough good about it. Everything is, like I said, it's not an easy job. It's not a. I'll give it a 7 out of a 10 on a hardness scale. If you got the right tools, it makes it a little easier. But for somebody who's got a grinder, a couple of tools, a few hours, I'll give it a 7 out of a 10. For me, with a plasma cutter, I'll give it maybe a 5, 6, something like that. But it's not a hard job. It just takes a little bit of time. And do the same thing on the other side. Big important piece of this kit is this little skid plate bracket, where you cut this hole in the front of your frame. The diff pretty much sits right there. I mean, it is super close. I mean, if you didn't put this on here, you hit something, you're busting your case. So this is a piece of like 1/4 inch steel plate, bent, bolts up right there. Nice protective piece. So we're gonna put that in there. Probably should have did it before I put the diff in, but that's my fault. I think I can get to the nuts, so it's just gonna be a little bit more difficult. Again, nice hardware, nice piece. But this is a pretty important piece. You don't put this on here, you hit a rock, you're damaging your diff. So again, you can weld this on here, which I may do later at some point, but I'm gonna build bumpers and whatnot, so I'm gonna have to modify it a little bit probably. Yeah. It's no worse than taking the radius rods loose, trying to get to those bottom nuts. That's me trying to hold it with my knee is kind of a hit. I need 4 hands. I need my wife out here. We got that good and tight now. Again, I'm gonna just double check it. Don't want this thing falling off while I'm riding and take a chance of busting this diff. All right, so we got everything tight. Everything's buttoned up. Like I said, this thing fits awesome. Pretty much we just got to put everything back together, put the axles in, suspension, radiators, fill it with fluid, and she'll be ready to go. All right, everybody, I got the diff in, everything's buttoned up, radiators filled back up, coolant lines hooked up, everything's hooked up. I've already started the razor, made sure it didn't overheat, got it up to temperature, made sure everything cycled and all the air got out of the radiator. Everything come together good. Can't say enough for the quality and the craftsmanship that goes into this part that Joe Kaufman has manufactured. He makes an awesome plate and kit to make these RS1 / Turbo S diffs work in these standard razors. Fit and finish is unreal. This thing kind of just falls into place once you get the modifications done to the frame as per his instructions. I had to go back a couple times and kind of remodify and
give myself more clearance. A lot of it is just to get the diff into the frame. I mean, the diff is big. I mean, it's a lot bigger than the regular turbo diff, and you got to make it get in there. Once you get it in there, everything bolts up. Like I said, the A-arm bolts holes on those little brackets, they lined up perfect. That just shows you the time and the R&D that goes into stuff like this. If you have any questions about this conversion, feel free to comment on this video and I'll try to answer your questions. Anything else, you can contact Joe Kaufman or anybody that makes these parts, and they can answer any of your questions. If you follow his instructions, you can't do this wrong. I mean, everything is color pictures telling you exactly where to cut, and it's basically connect the dots. It's basically super simple. Start to finish, I'm going to say it took me about 4 hours to complete this job. The biggest pain in the butt was this front, cutting the hole in the front of the factory frame. But the plasma cutter helps. If you got a plasma cutter, it'll definitely help to use it. Then I had to put the diff in, pull it out, kind of trim some areas, and make it work. And another big key, like I said before, is leave everything loose until you get everything together, because it helps everything line up. Just trying to give you some tips. Also, again, if you got steering rack problems, if you're thinking about putting an aftermarket steering rack, or you're thinking about replacing your steering rack, do it, because if you have to change your steering rack, you'll have to pull all of this out to do it. You can't get to the bolts on the steering rack. Just a little heads up. There will be a lot of videos coming up. Hopefully once this weather dries out here, it is horrible right now. It's super nasty, and I feel like it's never going to dry out, but soon we will ride and get to test this stuff out, and I will have some updates and how these parts do, and hopefully keep you guys entertained. If you like these videos, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I'm going to try to bring you guys a lot more content. Again, have any questions, feel free to comment, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See y'all.